again, everyone, for showing up. 50 participants. This is incredible. This is the most we've ever had for a garden guest. Thank you so much, Miss Juanita, for giving us this wonderful presentation, and we'll go ahead and let you get started.
Great. So I am brand new to Master Gardening. I was in the COVID class this past spring, so we got about 2 months in, and then we had to go virtual. But my family thought it was hilarious that I was going to be in a Master Gardener group. So what really got me started is I work at UTC Housing, and we had a student leave behind a succulent garden. And I took it home when they all left in April, when we started having our shutdown, because I was learning all about this in our Master Gardener classes. So I took it home, and I was so excited. It had 5 plants, and that's the most I had ever had in my house, because I am notorious for being the black thumb. My daughter is the green thumb in the family. So I brought this home and said I was going to keep it alive, and everybody laughed at me. So this became a because I know that I found out so many different things when I was researching this PowerPoint for the presentation that I'm excited about trying several new things out. So basically what we need to know is, what is a succulent? Succulents are very nice, they're not flowers, but they're nice greeny. Most of them are greeny, and they're really, really cute. They are the most adorable plants, I think. They are adapted to dry environments that have full sun and no shelter. So they're used to being exposed. One of the studies I came across, actually from NASA, they found that succulents have been able to purify the air of harmful toxins that are there. And so just having a succulent in your house is already a bonus. And succulents are really good starter plants because they are very low maintenance. I discovered that quickly, and that's why I now adore succulents, because it's not a lot of maintenance. I don't have to check on the soil. I don't have to really do a lot, as long as I make sure that the water is taken care of and the temperature is there. One thing about succulents is that they are defined by their moisture storing capacity, and they come from many different botanical families. So botanically speaking, the term succulent refers to any plant that has evolved adaptations to survive in hot, arid environments. We are not a hot, arid environment here in the South. We are very humid, but that does allow the succulents to be able to thrive in this area. Now, one thing about this is succulents doesn't refer to just any specific family of plants. In fact, the succulents actually are not all related to each other, even though they're classified as a succulent. So some of the characteristics of a succulent can include an epidermis with a waxy cutin. And if you notice the outside here of the aloe plant, it's a thicker coating than you would see on most of your regular leaves. You have a thickened, and they're a lot thicker and they're fleshy. They do provide an alternative mode of photosynthesis, and many plants would be considered succulent, even though we don't normally think of them as that. You have snake plants and ponytail palms. They both have different adaptations for surviving in desert conditions, but because they meet the general characteristics of succulents, they are considered a succulent. This is the most interesting part that I found, is all cacti are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti. So this was just blew my mind when I saw this, because cacti are succulents from the family Cactaceae, because they have the internal fleshy parts to the plant where they store water. Most species of cacti have lost their true leaves. They only have spines on the outside, and I didn't know this, but spines are actually highly modified leaves. The trait of succulents has evolved multiple times throughout plant history, and each time has been as a response to climate shifts where we have developed more arid conditions. Other plants have evolved succulent characteristics as well, like the yucca, agave, and aloe. So basically, this is my go-to when I first started, was how not to kill my succulents. I wasn't worried about making new plants, having this flourishing new hobby. I just wanted to not kill these 5 plants that I was able to find. So you need to make sure that your succulents get enough light. Succulents love light, and they need about 6 hours of sun a day, but that also depends on the type of succulent that you have. If you've got newly planted succulents, they can scorch in the direct sunlight, so you're going to need to gradually introduce them to full sun exposure or provide some shade. So be very careful if you've got the new one and you stick it in the window with your other succulents, because that light can be too much on them. You need to make sure that you rotate your succulents frequently. They love direct sun, but if it's sitting in the same spot day after day, then of course only that one side is getting enough light. So you want to rotate it often. They're going to lean towards the sun, so rotating them will help them stand up straight. And also in any other plant too, leaning may also be a sign that they need to be in a sunnier spot because they're trying to reach for that light. You're going to do seasonal watering. Succulents need more energy when they're in a period of growth. So during the spring and summer, that's when they're going to be thriving and drinking up so much more water, because they're going to go into a hibernation or resting stage in the fall and the winter. Basically, one way to see if you've got enough water is just to touch the soil with your finger. When the top 1.5 inches are dry, you're going to need to water it. Overwatering can also kill your succulents, so you've got to make sure that you let the soil dry before you do it again. So it's a wet, dry means, and that was really hard for me because I was always taught if the soil is dry, you need to water it. And succulents are absorbing that water, so they need extra time to be able to absorb more of it. When you water, you need to make sure that you actually water the soil. You don't water the top of the succulents, you need to do the soil, because the water runs out of the drainage hole. So what you want to do is make sure you have the drainage hole so that you don't have water sitting within the soil. It can be absorbed by the roots. Don't use a spray bottle to water it, because misting it can cause brittle roots and moldy leaves. Once the top of the soil is moist, then you can remove your drip pan from beneath. You actually need to be able to keep your succulents clean. With being an indoor plant, they're going to pick up dust on their surface, which can actually inhibit their growth. So what you're going to do is just wipe off the leaves and the spines gently with a damp cloth. If you've got some that are harder to reach towards the base, you can actually use a really soft paintbrush to get in between some of the leaves to be able to get any dust or debris out of there. Always make sure that you've got drainage. So you're going to choose a container that has drainage. They don't like to sit in waterlogged soil, so it's important that they have that water that flows through, because the drainage helps to prevent any rots that could set up with your roots. Your container should have a drainage hole to allow excess water to escape, and terracotta pots are the perfect thing for beginners because of the flow that they allow. You've got to make sure that you have your succulents in the right kind of soil. They need soil that drains, so regular potting soil or just dirt from your yard will not work. You need a special cactus soil or mixed potting soil that has sand, pumice, and perlite. This allows the water to flow through to be able to reach all of the roots. And their roots are doing a lot of work, but they're really super fragile. So you've got to be very careful when you are planting them in your soil, because you can definitely do significant damage with that. If you've got bugs, you need to make sure that you deal with them quickly. That shouldn't be a problem for indoor succulents, but sometimes it can be. Gnats are attracted to succulents that are planted in soil that is too wet or doesn't have proper drainage. To get rid of eggs and larvae, what you're going to do is spray the soil with a 70% Asparagus alcohol. This is going to take care of mealybugs, which are the most common succulent pests that you have to deal with. Overwatering and over-fertilizing are the most common causes of mealybugs. You're going to need to move your infected plants away from other succulents, and you're going to need to continue to spray with the alcohol until the plants are bug-free. You definitely need to use your summertime to fertilize your succulents, because this is going to be their growing season. And what you're going to do is make sure that they've got plenty of nutrients to be able to grow. And you've got to make sure not to over-fertilize. This can actually cause your succulent to grow too quick, and then it's going to become a lot weaker because it's not grown at this pace that it needs to. All right, a couple of common problems that you're going to see with succulents are going to be that your leaves are curling or they're wrinkling. When you see this, you're going to check your soil, because most of the time what has happened is they need water. It's just basically that the soil is too dry, it's thirsty, and it's been underwatered, so you want to give them some water, and that should brighten your leaves right up. With yellow leaves, that can be from too much water. It can be from root rot because of overwatering, and it can also be from too much light. So if you've got it in a concentrated area, that light can affect as well. Overwatering is the most common reason for yellowing leaves on a succulent plant. If you have constantly wet soil, that can rot the plant's roots, and that interferes with its ability to take in the water and nutrients from the soil. This will interrupt the photosynthesis and the plant's leaves and other parts that are above the soil, and its color will gently fade to yellow. If it's left untreated, overly wet conditions can cause leaves to fall or the upper parts of a succulent to soften and rot, which will eventually kill the plant. You're going to always want to check your plant soil with your fingertip, and if it feels wet, then overwatering is likely a cause. And if you can see in this picture, you've got a couple of the tips. You've got a tip starting where it's starting to rot and get mushy, and then you've got some of the leaves towards the bottom that are much more impacted by the yellow coloring. If it's only got a few yellow leaves, then you're probably going to be able to correct it yourself if you stop watering until the soil dries out, and then water only when the top 1 to 2 inches of soil feel dry. When a plant starts to drop leaves, which you can see right at the bottom of the plant, you've got 2 really skinny, wrinkled, raisin-looking leaves. That's when it's probably going to be necessary to change the soil, and you're going to have to remove it from its pot and then gently shake the soil from the roots. Repotting the plant in a container with a large drainage hole is going to definitely help. If you use an unglazed ceramic pot, which the terracotta pots are, this is going to allow the soil to dry quickly. When you water the repotted plant, you've got to make sure that it's not sitting in that saucer. So many plants that we have, we leave that saucer underneath and we let that water be absorbed back into that. This is not what you need to do with a succulent. If the soil that you're using is a well-draining mix formulated just for succulents and overwatering is not the cause, then that's where it can be your lighting conditions. Most succulents can handle lots of light, but a green succulent that begins to take on a lighter, bleached out yellowish color is being grown in too much light, like full sun for the entire day. Moving the plant into a spot that gets bright, indirect light should easily correct the problem that you're having with the coloration. So one thing that I found that was really interesting is the number of different types of succulents. So there are 6 families that are prevalent with succulents. And then just within those, you may have up to 200 different species of plants available. So what we're going to do is the first one we're going to look at is the Stonecrop family. This one, like I said, has over 200 just in this particular one. This one is the most commonly thought of and sought after family whenever someone thinks of a succulent. It's a diverse family. Plants in this family occasionally resemble stones. They grow in between stones, and they are very resilient. No plant in this family is actually farmed as a crop, but it's propagated just to be a horticultural and ornamental plant. Most of these are best and easily propagated using fallen leaves or cuttings. And we'll talk a little bit more about propagation towards the end of the session. All right, so a jade plant is one of the first in this family. This is actually called a lucky plant. It's a very popular house plant. The story behind this is the Chinese believe that this plant attracts money because the leaves look like coins. Although there's no scientific basis to that, the succulent is still an effective indoor plant because of the attractive form and stress-free maintenance. It is a small plant that fits small containers, but tends to grow very lanky in the shade. It can also be allowed to grow a tree-like form in the garden. There's autumn flame, and I have one of these, and I actually have a fake one of those that I kept at my office so I could still have some greenery in my office. This is called the autumn flame. This is a type of plant that's very good, and it's a wonderful house plant. It's a rosette of leaves. They're shiny and curved, and they're not the usual green color, so it makes them very unique. It's a very deep red with a lighter shade as you go out towards the edges of the leaves. This can also be mistaken as a rose flower because of its shape. Although the plant is usually solitary, offshoots can grow from fleshy stalks and be planted on its own. This is a particular succulent that grows best under full sun and dry soil, but it can tolerate partial shade. All right, this one is the Encantada. I actually have this one in the initial 5 that I was able to get, and it was huge. It looked like a little leaf of cabbage. It was amazing. This one is a teardrop-shaped leaves that are arranged in a rosette form, and each fleshy leaf is frosty white in color, so it looks a little snowy. It grows close to the ground, and in fall, long stalks carry clusters of extended leaves that protect delicate, bright orange flowers. This one is very often grown indoors, and it can be placed where it can receive sunlight for the most part of the day. Flowering is only going to happen when there is natural light as well as the well-draining soil. So some of your succulents are going to flower, but it's only under the right conditions. We did get one stalk on ours developed, but it never flowered, so we just trimmed that and hoped that we would get flowering one the next time. All right. I'm sorry, but I'm not going to butcher the name of this because some of them were just really hard, so I apologize. This is a frosty-looking succulent, and this can actually grow up to a foot tall. It looks like a lotus flower, but it has a layered rosette of thick, pointed, bean-shaped leaves. So just within this one plant, you're looking at 3 different shapes already. Some varieties of this are purple and yellow, but most are this silvery green. Side shoots can develop here, and it can create a compact mound on the ground or in pots. The plant produces flowers on branching stalks, and you can see you've already got a couple of flowers within this little plant here. They are going to be tiny red or orange petaled, resembling a bell with the yellow center. And this is another one that is perfect for the indoors. This one right here is one of the few succulents that's native to Europe and also to Asia. In ancient Rome, it was grown on the roofs of houses because it was observed that thunderbolts would never strike these plants, so they were thought to ward off thunderbolts, sorcery, and storm damage. But also to cool houses in the hot Mediterranean summers. What we know now is it's likely the rocks that the plant grows on is the real reason why nothing was being struck by lightning. All right, once again, we've got our all cactuses are succulents, but not all succulents are cacti. So this was a really interesting group. The family of this, which is Cactaceae, gets its name from the Greek cactos, which means spiny plant. This is a new world family that has evolved recently in the plant world, but it's very diverse. This is a family that has evolved to be completely succulent with a trend of modifying their leaves to form spines. The branches are reduced to structures called areoles. So what you have on the left is the areole. That is a cactus. On the right, the green is a succulent. It also has the spines, but the difference between the two is a cactus can have the spine, a succulent can have a spine, but only a cactus can have the areole. So that is the easiest way to tell the difference between the two. Without areoles, the succulent cannot be a cactus. Right. Flowers will also grow on your cacti. The flowers will have many stamen, and that's going to produce a lot of pollen, and they're often scented as well to attract flying pollinators. Most cacti will flower at night, and usually for only one night. Night blooming is an adaptation that helps to conserve water. Since the window for pollination is so short, cacti rely on their short-lived flowers to attract bats, insects, and birds, all of which find the flowers very fragrant. The goal is to attract as many pollinators as quickly as possible. Most cacti are going to reproduce easily by seed, but can also be propagated by segments or pads. Okay, this is actually a cactus. It's Perekesia. It's a genus of plants that is a sister to the cacti and is related to the ancestor of cacti. We are able to get a better grasp of how cacti have evolved so quickly by being able to study this plant. They've modified their leaves rapidly, and you can trace the ancestry. It turns out the Perekesia is already semi-cactus-like in that they have leaves modified into spines, but also retain a few leaves. Only a few mutations are needed to turn all the leaves into spines. Many cacti have used their resources to evolve spines and water-conserving mechanisms, so they have not evolved too many secondary metabolites that are toxic. In other words, many cacti are edible, and then three of the most common ones are going to be the prickly pear, which is the purple with the yellow flower on there. Prickly pear has been a staple in Mexican and Central American cooking for thousands of years. It's also gaining popularity around the world as a healthy addition to a balanced diet. The prickly pear actually has three different edible sections. You have the pad of the cactus called the nopal, which can be used as the vegetable. That's going to be your very broad portion of the plant. The flower petals can be used as a garnish or added to salads, and then the pear will basically be eaten like any other fruit. Your middle cactus is a dragon fruit, and I thought that was an interesting fact that I didn't know that dragon fruit was actually part of a cactus. It's available pretty much everywhere around the world. You can find it in your grocery stores, but the plant itself is indigenous to Mexico and South America. It's a really good source of fiber. It has a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it's really cool to look on the inside because it is white with just little black seeds. So once you get over the almost ugliness of the outside, the inside is gorgeous. And then the last one to the right that is stacked, this is actually called peyote. This are cactus, and the crowns are going to be used in a tea by either soaking them or chewing them. In the U.S., it's illegal to possess peyote. However, it's often used in religious ceremonies in the Native American groups. People use peyote to cause hallucinations and for conditions such as fevers, wounds, and joint pain, but there's no good scientific evidence to support those medicinal uses. Using peyote can also be very unsafe, but it is a common plant that you will find out in the West, so I wanted to make sure and include that one. All right, we've got our third family, and this is the Spurge family. This is a family of flowering plants whose ancestors were tropical in origin. This is believed to be why, out of most succulents, they have the most toxic secondary metabolites. Tropical plants defend themselves by synthesizing many poisonous compounds. These produce a latexy sap that is highly toxic to ingest and irritating to those who have a latex allergy. So always follow up and make sure that your plant is not going to be in this particular category if you do have a latex allergy, because interacting with it will definitely have a significant health disadvantage to you. This group have reduced flowers that are mostly wind pollinated, and they reproduce easily through pups or cuttings, although seeds are definitely possible. They do not form associations with animals and have retained their ancestral leaves, but the more desert-dwelling species are often more deciduous with either reduced or somewhat waxy leaves. The leaves appear in the wet season or the springtime and drop during the dry season. And that's when it will take on the appearance of a cactus. Remember, true cacti do not have leaves except for the Perekesia, which is one that we've already talked about. The euphorbs here in the Spurge family appear to have spines, but they are not true spines. Rather, they are modified leaf stipules, which are modified projections of the actual leaf stalks. They do not have the areoles, and they are obvious places where new growth will come. So even though you have the tips of the leaves here, it's not like it would be with other succulents to where it was going to automatically present as a possible place to have an offshoot. This one I really thought was cute, and the fact that it was called octopus arms. It looks like a small version of your usual tall and branching desert cactus. It has a slender, slightly segmented light green stems that tend to droop as it grows. So you can see the curvature in the bottom of some of these stems as it's starting to grow. New stems will branch out from older stems, creating a wiry appearance, and each of these bears a series of small concave leaves. Like most euphorbias, this species can thrive on its own. It does not need constant care and grows healthy even when abandoned. It likes the morning sun and well-draining soil, but when planted indoors, the plant will need more frequent watering than succulents and light watering once a week. So this euphorbia looks like a hybrid between the cactus and the Echeveria. The thick purplish green stems have distinct stout tuberals with tiny spines on each end. It has a leaning growth habit extending upwards with new stems forming at the base of the plant. As it matures, rosette of leaves forms at the apex of the stem, as well as small yellow flowers in between the spines. So you can see at the very bottom, at the base of the plant, how thick it is, and you can see some of the yellow flowers that are starting to form. Here we have the pencil tree, and this one is like no other euphorbia. The peeling structure of this plant is based on the long, smooth, dark green stems of the plant branching at different heights, making the plant look like a tree that has lost all its leaves. What is unique about this plant is it can actually reach up to 16 feet tall, but when you plant it inside, it can stay smaller and be a more approachable size in your home. The new shoots are light green and bear leaves that soon will drop over time. There are varieties that are light green all throughout, and some are yellow or red. When grown in clusters in the garden, the fine stems create a soft element in the landscape when you're viewing it from a distance. All right, our false globus spurge. I love the names of some of these plants. This is a spineless succulent. It forms semi-ribbed segmented stems that appear like gray-green balls growing on top of the other when they're young. The stems eventually elongate and the whole plant forms a prominent cadeau. On top of each stem form several tiny yellow flowers. They are slow growing, but they can form a dense mound that is interesting to look at. So I can just imagine how big this can get. And if you look right here in the top, there's a very small bud that is starting to grow. So that's going to be even more to grow on what we've already got. All right, the Asparagus family is actually part of the succulent family. And it also includes some of our semi-succulent plants like agave, ponytail palms, dracena, and hyacinths, and yucca. Many are propagated by divisions or cuttings. Asparagaceae gets its name from asparagus, borrowed from the ancient Greek asparagus, which was then borrowed from an earlier Persian word asparag, which means young shoot. Since the vegetable asparagus is actually a young harvested shoot, the name fits very well for this group. So we have Agave americana, which is a century plant, is another name. This is a succulent that originated from the sunny parts of America like Texas and Arizona. Since the plant is drought tolerant and loves the bright sun, it is often found in desert-themed landscape designs where it provides a strong focal point. The tough pointed leaves also serve as a good barrier. It is best known for its sturdy rosette of toothed blue-green leaves. In the garden, it can grow up to 2 meters tall and 3 meters wide. So basically 6 feet tall and about 9 feet wide. So you're just going to let it sit and root in sandy or well-draining soil. It can survive the winter, but you've got to make sure to minimize watering to only once a month. Your white hair agave is going to be a smaller plant in this particular group. It only grows up to 1 foot tall, so it is the perfect agave to grow indoors. The narrow green leaves almost look like stout clumps of grasses with distinct fine white hair-like tufts on each tip. The leaf tip is also pointed, so be careful when you're placing it inside the house. We have had this one, and this one does stick when you get those points. Here we have the dwarf hedgehog agave. This one has very needle-like green leaves that form a round shape and makes the plant look like a hedgehog. Although this agave grows only 1 foot big, the leaves are so fine and pointed that they are better left outdoors or on your patio. It grows close to the ground, so the form of the plant can be better appreciated when elevated in pots or planters. Most agaves rarely flower, but when they do, it is usually towards the end of their life cycle. This agave produces a long stalk of purple flowers. It also reproduces from underground rhizomes, so new plantlets grow at the base, making it look like Mother Hedgehog cuddling its baby. Right. Here we have a new family, the Asphodel family. This includes succulents and semi-succulents like Aloe, Gasteria, Haworthia, and they are propagated by divisions as these plants tend to produce many pups or suckers. It gets its name from the Greek asphodelus, which was the flower associated with the dead and the underworld. The grayish complexion and lifeless look of the pallor green of these plants compared with the other more green plants made them the perfect fit for a flower of the dead. These plants were said to grow all along the fields of the dead and would be the plains of the afterlife. This was according to Homer, so we all know how Homer knows his stuff. And it said that these were, the concept of these in the afterlife is even more ancient than Homer. Aloe compressa has a unique formation of leaves, and it sets it apart from other garden plants. The horizontally symmetrical, long, triangular, gray-green leaves sit on the top of each other, looking like a multi-pronged trident without the handle. Some varieties have a slight tinge of pink or purple, while others have white patterns and stout leaves. Our golden tooth aloe draws attention with its rosette leaf formation. These leaves are green with reddish chips and white marginal teeth. They can reach up to 1 foot high, but they can remain smaller, and a more striking effect is achieved when they grow in clusters. With its compact size, this succulent is among the most favorite aloes to grow indoor. This is one that we have, and we have used this often when we've had a burn. We clip off the top tip, and then we apply the aloe straight to the burn. Here we have an Aloe Pepe, and this is a dwarf aloe that was derived from a mother plant that resembles Haworthia because of the appearance. The smaller leaves are peppered with white dots and soft teeth. They are arranged in a rosette pattern, growing no more than about 5 centimeters. A pepe is best planted in a pot spacious enough for it to produce offshoots. Over time, the plant will become denser and it can be repotted to a bigger container, or the newly established shoots can be transferred in individual pots. Here we've got a star cactus. This unique succulent is among many gardeners' favorites. The rosette is made of thick leaves that look like they are about to burst. The underside of the leaves is solid green, while the upper side appears translucent with green or white striations. They are generally small and only grow up to about 10 centimeters tall. Other varieties feature dark brown or flattened leaves. Like the aloes, this one is very easy to grow indoors. Sun exposure by the windowsill is enough, as well as watering every 2 to 3 weeks. They do not like to sit in water, so a soil mixture with good drainage is definitely necessary. This one has got to be my favorite. This is the string of dolphins. And I used to see this all over Facebook, and I'm like, oh, these are going to be great. This will be easy to find. And it's not. This is actually a rare variety of trailing succulents, and it looks like a little pod of leaping dolphins. It's an uncommon hybrid that is a cross of string pearls and candle plants. It's really difficult to find. It takes a lot of special care, but it's definitely worth the effort. You can have seeds, but there are no guarantee that the seeds are going to actually grow because it is so hard to get them to be able to. So if you can find them and you see that the leaves have already formed the dolphin shapes, and that's definitely a good catch. They also have flowers. That's going to be on the right-hand side, and it looks like daisies. Their flowers have lots of narrow white petals. The petals cluster in a sphere and then form a pom-pom of a bloom. On top of that, the flowers then have a lovely cinnamon fragrance. They need sunlight, but they also have a new unique feature because they are hybrid, which means that they have leaf windows that can tolerate slightly less light than some non-green succulent varieties. To strike the right balance, you want to try and place it indoors in the shade or indoors near a sunny window, so it doesn't have to be in the direct sunlight. All right, we are going to talk about how to propagate. So basically, you can do several different means to be able to propagate. You can remove your plantlets, and then by doing that, these are going to be fully formed and rooted mini plants that are going to be able to grow independently. So you see in this top picture, you got the mini versions here. You're also going to have some of the chicks and hens that are going to form, and then you also have the little pups here. So some of the plants are actually going to do like seeds, and they're going to take root where they fall, which you may see here, but it depends on the particular type of succulent that you have on whether or not it will be a plantlet that you can remove. You can also do through root separation. Basically, you're going to take the entire plant, you're going to just gently tease the roots apart, and then you're going to plant the separated clumps individually. Plants that have been divided by root separation may be placed in your soil immediately. For indoor plants, you're going to want to, once again, use the soil that has been recommended for succulent plants. You're going to wait a day, and then you're going to water it sparingly because you don't want to create too much water in that to create the root rot. If you have an outdoor plant, you're going to want to go ahead and return it outdoors, but make sure that it's not going to be planted when the sun is directly overhead. What you're going to want to do is work the soil until it's crumbly. Then you're going to mound it up a bit, create that shallow depression for room for the roots, and then you're going to just gently put it in there, and then you just tap it in. You're going to wait a day or two, and then lightly water the soil around the plant. If you plant this while this direct sun is on there, it will not be able to survive. So you want to get it in place after the sun has been at its highest point over the portion that you're planting. You also can do cuttings. With a cutting, you're just going to cut off a piece of a leaf or a stem, let it dry, and then you'll have roots and shoots in no time. The trick is to keep it totally dry. You can do what we have here on the left, which is leaf removal. You're going to randomly remove several leaves, dry them out, let them grow roots, and then plant. On the right-hand side here, you have what is known as beheading. This is a good fix for a plant that's grown really tall or whose leggy bare limbs drape downward. What you're going to do is you're going to simply cut the head of the plant off. You're going to leave about an inch of the stem attached, dry it out, let it grow roots, and then plant it. The remaining stem of a healthy beheaded plant should grow new leaves in a compact grouping, making for a sturdier, more attractive plant. So you can see how this can come from a much larger plant, and they've just taken this portion of the stem. So the last little bit that I have is just finding new ways to display your succulents. And this is the most creative part of being a succulent parent, is finding ways to be able to do it. So it can be crafty, it can be very simple, but I've just included some of the favorite ones that I have found. And this is just growing them on a vine in just little bottles right there in your window. This would be a real good way to take any of your leaves to be able to propagate them. This one is really nice, just a nice greenery set up in the corner of the house. This is basically just PVC pipe that's been attached to the side of a house. Here you've got rims, it's on the fence outside, or you can even have it on the inside, and it's just got the rock, so you've got the aerated portion of that. Just a nice little wooden box to have all sorts of varieties of your succulents in, because all the succulents can grow together. So that gives you a lot of variety in how you do it. Here you've got the cacti with several other of the succulents. This one is really nice if you've got a big outdoor space. This one I felt was really unique because it definitely put a craftiness in the thinking of making this particular planter. Reusing a bird cage, making an indoor terrarium, another use for a bird cage as they are growing down and out of it. This one I really liked was the seashells. So it would be really nice to have a really big conch shell and have the dolphins, string of dolphins that were growing out of it. Having them grow out of letters, becoming artwork, making a succulent wreath. This one is really nice. This is a palette garden using all succulents. And then I just want to leave you with a quote from Audrey Hepburn. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. During COVID and the initial shutdown that we experienced in April, succulents became a lifesaver for myself and my daughter. It's something that we did together, and we're able to take time out of all the crazy that was going on in the world and focus on something different. Every day we worked together, and this helped us get through the many weeks that we were stuck being at home. She received a small greenhouse for her birthday, so that was a whole new world for us. It's right outside our back door. We live in the city. We are in an apartment building, but we have a greenhouse that we can see right outside our back window. Because of this, we were able to have hope and see a future, as we knew that those plants would still be there tomorrow. So it completely opened up a whole new feeling during COVID to be able to see these succulents and be a part of their growth. So I just want to thank everyone for coming, and I just hope you learned something new and enjoyed it. So thank you.
Thank you. It was very interesting.
Yeah, that was really good.
Thank you.
And again, great job. Seriously, that was super interesting.
Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing your lunch hour with us.